is here, though. I want to bring him on. We are joined. Give me 1 second. Come on. There we are. We're joined with Patrick Henningsen. Patrick, how you doing, man? You doing okay this morning? Well, evening.
I'm good. I'm good, Jamal. No, it's afternoon, actually. This is lunchtime here in the UK.
For me, it's at night. It's like 6 o'clock here. It's pitch black outside.
Yeah.
But Patrick Henningsen, founder of independent news website, 21st Century Wire. Patrick, you guys do shows also. When are your shows active?
Well, we do a live show on Sunday. It's called the Sunday Wire. We got really good response from the program we did 2 days ago on the Charlie Kirk incident. That's at 21st Century Wire live, 5 p.m. UK time, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard every Sunday. Midweek Wire, same times. Yeah.
Give me your take on that. I mean, I was going over the audience with something that Candace Owens pointed out, saying that he was being pressured on the issue of Israel. Kirk has been interesting to me on a few counts. One, in this kind of weird propaganda war that's taking place, where the left and the right are trying to use him as a cudgel to hit the other side.
Yeah, definitely.
And that, to me, that is one of the most interesting things in the world. The guy dies. The right tries to reinvent who he was. The left tries to maintain this notion of, look, here are all the videos of what this guy was. Stop trying to make him into some kind of prophet or some kind of civil rights hero. And then both go with this idea of, well, look at this good white guy that murdered him. And the other side is like, well, he was living with a transgender person, so obviously he is on the left. And this war of narrative has been taking place ever since Charlie Kirk's death, with Charlie Kirk effectively being a cudgel, not even a human being, a part of this. Give me a take on this before I move to the Candace Owens thing, because I do want to get your take on that also. But on that very first point, give me your thoughts.
Well, let's just, I think it's important to frame this in a certain way and to look at this in a wider perspective. And the perspective I think that's important for people to understand is, who was Charlie Kirk? What was Charlie Kirk? What is Turning Point USA as an organization? And how is being portrayed in this narrative is that Charlie Kirk was a podcaster and he was just this guy, young guy who had an opinion on things, and he was with this organization called Turning Point USA. You know, not much to see here. It's, pro MAGA. No, Turning Point USA had revenues of $100 million in 2024. That's according to their records, upwards of 100 million. Okay. That's a big political action committee running as a 501c3 or a not-for-profit. It's basically a political action committee with an events arm and a media arm, basically. Charlie Kirk was put as the head of this organization, which he co-founded. But what's important is, how do they get 100 million a year? And they get those from some of the most wealthy individuals in the United States of America, the donor class, billionaires, richest people in the country. So Charlie Kirk is really a megaphone for the billionaire class. So whatever the donor class, hundreds of millions or billions, some of them are worth, some of these family foundations, that he's a reflection of their views. He's a reflection of their desires of how to shape the American political landscape, albeit on the so-called conservative side, or the so-called Christian conservative side, or the so-called Christian Zionist side. Okay. So he is really a reflection of that. His views are not necessarily independent, because if Charlie Kirk lived in a $6 million estate in Scottsdale, Arizona, that's one of the richest pieces of real estate neighborhoods in the country. Okay. Right up there with Beverly Hills and everything else. So, and he's not short. He wasn't short of a few dollars. Neither is his family. But he had the views that you have most likely have to be reflective of your donor class. Otherwise, you will not get the money. Otherwise, your organization will be shut down. And so whether or not he changed those views in the last few months because of certain pressures that have come as a result of changes in trending topics and changes in attitudes within MAGA, specifically to do with Israel, and also to do with the cover-up, the Trump administration's blatant cover-up of the Epstein files. So that split and fractured MAGA created a lot of consternation, a lot of problems within Charlie Kirk's world as well, within the Turning Point world, because they represent 18 to 35-year-olds, young conservatives. And so if you think about it from an Israeli lobby point of view, if that is the number one young conservative organization and they're steering that crowd, 18 to 35s, that's the future electorate. Those are many future congressional persons, federal employees, senators, presidents will come out of Turning Point. So if they're wavering on the Israel issue, that's an existential threat to the Israeli lobby and to Israeli interest. So then Charlie Kirk goes from becoming an ally and an asset of the Israeli Zionist interests and the ultra-conservative U.S. right to being a potential problem or a potential liability in a very short space of time. We're talking about the last 4 or 5 months, maybe in really the last 8 weeks, okay, since the Epstein story went toxic, okay, for Trump. So this is the point I try to make to people. Charlie Kirk was a political tool while he's alive, okay? After death, he continues to be a political tool used by the very same forces that used him while he was alive in order to be a divisive, polarizing figure, to drive divisive narratives, to create schisms, left, right, woke, anti-woke, pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, pro-Christian, pro-Muslim. These are all artificial schisms that are created through media, through big money injected into politics, and a lot of this division it benefits the Israeli lobby, benefits Benjamin Netanyahu and Zionists within the Washington that are driving the Middle East policy. And let's face it, look at the situation in the Middle East. I mean, look what the Israelis are doing to the native Palestinian population. They're exterminating them right in front of our eyes, especially in the last couple of weeks. It's shocking. And that's a criminal enterprise writ large. And the leader of that country, Benjamin Netanyahu, was meeting with Kirk just prior to his death. Reports are, if we go by the Gray Zone and others, that there are offers by Israel to bankroll Turning Point. Okay, and Charlie Kirk supposedly rebuffed these, and also was platforming Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Dave Smith, all people being a little bit more skeptical and objective on the Israel question at the recent Turning Point events. That was seen as a complete, anathema to what the donor class wanted from Turning Point, and Charlie Kirk is a betrayal, if you will. And he also challenged Ben Shapiro just the day before the shooting, asking tough questions on regarding Israel and how they're covered and what's allowable and not allowable in terms of criticism of Israel. And Shapiro was visibly uncomfortable on camera while this was happening. And so, we have to, these are all circumstantial factors, okay? But it's important in how we frame and look at this situation. This is putting the forensic case aside. Okay, so we're looking at the forensic shooting case. That's one item to analyze and look at. Then we have the circumstantial discussion, which is what are the political forces here that might be at play. And this is not about, it looks to me like a professional hit or whatever happened that day. It's professional hits can involve state actors. And there's one country that's involved in more political assassinations than any other country in the world, especially in the last few years, is the state of Israel. So one can't discount that in the discussion and the analysis. It really has to be included because you're dealing with forces of nature here that are well above the pay grade of Charlie Kirk, who is on $300,000 a year as the director of Turning Point, $100 million a year operation. This is goes way above that. We're talking about existential issues for the Zionist project in the Middle East, and with that, U.S. and British and European dominance of West Asia through destabilization. All of this is wrapped up in the Israel story, and it requires unconditional support from the United States to literally exist. Netanyahu is wanted in the International Criminal Courts of Justice as a war criminal. The ICJ has Israel on trial for crimes against humanity, for genocide. This is all happening right now. And so we have to look at this in a political context to say these are major factors here. Not to mention Charlie Kirk confided in his closest colleagues that he felt threatened that if he reversed or turned on Israel, it could, his life could be in danger. I mean, imagine if he had said that about, radical Islam or whatever, some other area of discussion. The press and the media would be all over it and say the Iranians did it. But because the fear was about the Israeli mafia, there's no discussion about it in the U.S. mainstream. It's not allowed. That conversation is unallowable.
Yeah.
So that's not a small thing. And I think Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and many others, and Dave Smith, and people supposedly on the right, or the libertarian or conservative right, or the Catholic conservatives, have broken ranks on the Israeli conversation. And I think Charlie Kirk might have been being pulled in that direction because he's reacting to his base, and the base is fractured. So Charlie Kirk was just like any mainstream podcaster. They'll stay with the establishment line, and then if there's a break in the base, if the news feed's trending in a different direction and the polling's trending in a different direction, which it is on Israel, then they pivot. They adapt and pivot. But until that time, they stick with the party line. That goes for Joe Rogan, Russell Brand, all of these high-profile, Patrick Bet-David. All these people are terrified to go against the grain and jeopardize their empire until such a time when the base has already fled, the base has already bolted, the bull's out of the stable, and then they start bringing guests on and talking about it in kind of questioning tones and so forth. Charlie Kirk is exactly the same. Although the difference between him and a mainstream podcaster is Charlie Kirk is accountable directly to a billionaire donor base, whereas the mainstream podcaster is really only accountable to the executives at YouTube. Let's just boil that down to simplicity. Okay. Yeah. So that I think is important to frame this in that perspective, and then we can have further discussions about what we think has happened or what didn't happen or where is this taking us. But with the last thing I'll say, Jamal, is you made the correct point right from the onset, which is the divisiveness. And if you look at what's happening in the UK, Elon Musk is pushing race wars. He's championing white supremacy, reverse immigration. He called the left the party of murderers in front of 100,000 people audience in the UK, where he was piped in by video supporting Tommy Robinson. Okay. So you're calling half of America murderers. That is Civil War talk coming from the richest man in the world, who only a few months ago bought himself a co-workspace in the White House for $250,000. Let's just boil it down to what it is. Not mince words. That's what Musk did. This is what he's doing. Why? What is he trying to achieve? What are the billionaire class attempting to do? Are they creating a situation whereby if a false flag attack happens in the United States, blamed on Iranians or Muslims, and then this, bloodthirsty mob will be demanding nuclear retaliation or demanding war or what have you? I don't think this is confined just to a domestic civil war strategy of tension. I think this is geopolitical. And I think the Charlie Kirk story somehow is being used to play into that.
How do you believe it's being used to play into it? Because that's an interesting angle. You're right. If we frame it in that sense, that Charlie Kirk, for all intents and purposes, was a mouthpiece for the billionaires, which I can't say you're wrong on this, right? Talking Points USA was a political action committee. Kirk was ahead of that. And part of what he did was going into colleges to try to recruit other, let's say, quote unquote, conservatives at a young age and pipe them into the political space under his ideology, which was effectively the ideology of the people that was paying him. Agreed. How do you think, though, that this gets escalated to a geopolitical, I don't know, cudgel, a geopolitical weapon of sorts?
Well, we don't have to look any further than Benjamin Netanyahu. He came right out of the gates, almost to over the top level
It's very weird.
Virtue signaling for Charlie Kirk. And then Netanyahu, before there's any evidence, before the blood was even dry on the carpet, Netanyahu is saying this is the radical progressives and the radical Islamists in this unholy, whatever combination of corrupt forces, whatever. So he's trying to bracket this as radical left and radical Islam are responsible for killing Charlie Kirk, and that should make people very suspicious. Why is a head of state, somebody who's an embattled war criminal, who's injecting this into the U.S. political conversation to a very malleable audience? Let's face it, Fox News, Newsmax, the type of people that watch and absorb that type of media, they'll hear that and they'll think there's something to it. And of course, Musk is then echoing this. Bill Ackman is echoing this. All the billionaire donors, pro-Israel billionaire donors, are echoing these exact same talking points. So they're fabricating a narrative, fashioning it now around Charlie Kirk to create a type of a martyr or a messiah or a prophet out of somebody who's quite unremarkable in their political sort of discourse. I mean, Charlie Kirk was not a political scientist. He is behind the curve on everything. And so what they're trying to do is stack on the left woke. So woke, pro-Palestine, LGBT, pro-trans, progressive, and let's just say Marxist or whatever, stack that up. And the other side on the right, stack anti-woke, pro-Israel, capitalist, anti-immigration, and of course pro-immigration or open borders on the left. So there's what they're saying is they're forcing you to make a choice. You're there with all of that on the left, or you're going to accept all of this on the right, and there's no nuance in between. Pick a side. Pick a side. And they're forcing people into these cul-de-sacs, which are completely artificial, in order to get people to say it's us or them. Major alternative media figures came out immediately after Charlie Kirk was shot, saying this is war against the radical left. They're coming for us. I won't name names, but you know who I'm talking about.
Yes,
they're coming for us. Tool up, get your guns, get your ammo, arm up. And so this is openly happening, and I'm shocked that I'm not surprised that it's not that people on the right aren't pushing back. I don't expect them to, but the left seems paralytic on this. Like they're not able to respond because in a way they're a victim of their own circumstance, because they've been pushing a phantom menace in Russiagate and Donald Trump being a Russian agent for the last 10 years, which is completely fake. And they basically shot everything in their political arsenal to try to take Trump down on false pretenses. And now you have the president mobilizing the military to do basic law enforcement in U.S. cities, and totally over the top on the ICE issue, eliminating due process, deporting people for, exercising their First Amendment on college campuses, all of these what can only be described as fascist. It's actually happening, and you don't see any Democrats mounting any serious opposition.
There's none. Yeah,
it's baffling, and it makes me think, well, maybe the liberal establishment wants this to happen as well. Why? So who benefits if the right are radicalized, the left are radicalized, and if they do clash, who benefits? Well, the state comes in. The state comes in with more authoritarian measures and controls, that would happen in the US, but it would really happen in the UK and Europe because they have much less rights than Americans do in terms of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. America at least has that backstop of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, but most European countries don't have that. Your rights are really whatever the state thinks they are at any given time. And so that would be the state reaction to quell domestic unrest, would be digital IDs, more facial recognition, more controls, more social media censorship, throttling, cancellation, arrests for hate speech and so forth. So the state's like really kind of licking its chops on this. And I think the Trump administration too, a lot of members of Trump's cabinet and so forth, putting out some very inflammatory statements on the back of the Charlie Kirk thing. So they're trying to cultivate political capital on the back of Charlie Kirk. They're all doing it. And it's so shameless. But this is where we're at politically. We have some of the shallowest people you can imagine that are basically driving politics and political discourse right now in America and also throughout the West. While the Western economies are failing, and of course, this is a great distraction away from real issues, like our governments are trying to kick off World War III in 2 or 3 different locations. The economy is in shambles. Sanctions have failed. Tariff wars have failed. Foreign policy in general has failed. And meanwhile, all these things go basically unattended. And the Epstein story in America just basically got washed away and denied by the government who ran and campaigned the Trump administration that he was going to release it all and expose it all and so forth. That's what people voted for him on that basis. It's not happening. He didn't deliver. Now instead you get a civil war.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I agree with you with the Democrats, but I think it has more to do with the fact that what you said prior, they shot their load on this whole Trump is working with the Russians. Trump is going to shoot Liz Cheney. Donald Trump is this, he's Hitler, et cetera, et cetera. And after all the lawfare, after all of the hyperbolic political rhetoric, he won. And I don't think they had anything else. I mean, if you think about it, Democrats support the Israeli occupation, murder, and genocide. They're okay with that. They are against, quote unquote, Russia aggression. And so when you get this kind of lion's share of Democrats working with the Republicans on that particular issue, it's like, where do you find your own space to push back? And apparently they haven't. They don't have a policy position in the US that anybody cares about or that matters. And so when real policy goes away and the nonsense stuff that they've effectively been using to push back fails, where are you? This is where you are, nowhere. There is no political opposition to what Donald Trump is doing. And I agree with you on the second point. There seems to be on social media and more strangely in the main political vein, an echoing of rhetoric. Charlie Kirk was killed by the woke leftists. Charlie Kirk was murdered by the woke leftists. Get your guns. This is white oppression. One guy came out. This is white oppression. We need to get our guns and so forth. No, I agree with you. They seem to be driving a narrative. And I guess my question was always, what is the point of this narrative that you guys are driving? What is the ultimate objective politically? And yeah, it could be more repression. You may be right. You may be absolutely right. That's where it seems like it's going. Because otherwise, I don't know what's the point of this level of echoing a very similar position, a very similar thought, and making and deifying Charlie Kirk as some kind of civil rights guy when, as you point out, he was a mouthpiece for the billionaire class.
There's another factor. There's a force multiplier in all this, and that's there's these narratives and this type of inertia, this political inertia. I'm talking about woke versus anti-woke, that kind of thing, that paradigm, left versus right, radical left versus conservatives and so forth, Muslims versus Christians, okay? It self-reproduces and it increases. Why? What is making it reproduce, and what is the force multiplier? The force multiplier is that a lot of people in the last few years in new media, what they call the alternative media, it's not alternative, all of the leading so-called independent media outlets, podcasts, persons are all basically people from the mainstream that have come and colonized the independent space, which is no longer independent. Okay. Like Barry Weiss, the Free Press, for instance, somehow managed to sell their Substack page to CBS for like $250 million. And suddenly Barry Weiss is at the top of the mainstream media pyramid as a gatekeeper. How did that happen? But anyway, Joe Rogan, all these people, Russell Brand, they're from the mainstream. And there's so many others I could say. There are independent people, but a lot of them are very wealthy. They're not actually grassroots independent journalists. There's a few, certainly the types of people you talk to, Jamal, and on some shows like yours, that's probably more of a true independent voice. But it's an industry, and that industry kind of came into its own. The Daily Wire is like the classic example. If I was doing media studies and we were really talking about this and breaking it down, deconstructing it, look at the Daily Wire as a case study. And who they selected as their hosts, how they launched. And it was really about like, you know, the anti-woke, the anti-left, that sort of thing. And they got a little bit into the anti-vax with the COVID crisis and so forth, into the freedom movement a little bit. But, and then the gender issue, you know, anti-trans and so forth. So that became the dominant. Jordan Peterson is another one. He's on the Daily Wire. Okay. He's in their stable of so-called influencers. And these are all people, many of them are liberals that basically found a home in the new conservative stable with making the focal point these culture war issues. Okay. And so then they carved out this space. The billionaire class, the money pours in because it realizes that this is the new, you know, sort of, if you will, center ground for the new conservative right. But these same people who are pouring the money in, they're also very, very staunch supporters of Zionism, be they Christian Zionists or be they Jewish Zionists, American or European. They want to basically get a hold of these influencers. Dennis Prager University, perfect example. It advocates, you know, very, very hard to the paint for Israel, but then fashions itself as a pro-freedom, pro-American organization. But on the issue of support for Israel, unflinching. And Dennis Prager himself is entertains the evangelical Christian cohort and so forth, and recruited Candace Owens from the get-go because they saw her on as a black conservative woman, who was a lethal weapon against the radical left, an asset. Immediately, she was recruited, sponsored, looked after, paid very well, and that platform helped to catapult her into the Daily Wire when she got even bigger. And then suddenly Candace Owens decides to think for herself and develop her own independent ideas. And all of a sudden, she's branded as public enemy #1 by Ben Shapiro and the mainstream media, casting her as a kook, as a conspiracy theorist, all these things. Why? Because she veered on one issue. And that was the issue of Israel and Gaza. That's it. So isn't that amazing with this whole, you know, Death Star of a right-wing media confab, and the one thing that can sort of make the whole thing malfunction is a single issue. And you know what? That's also the case with the Trump administration, that this one issue, as it did to the Democrats before with Biden, this one issue became a major fissure. And so Donald Trump's willing to trash the U.S. Constitution, trash the First Amendment, send Marco Rubio out to hunt down students for writing op-eds and calling them a threat to U.S. national security because they criticize Israel. So he's willing to trash the U.S. First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. Those are the bedrocks of United States society, of our country. Bar none. There is no Second Amendment. And to all you right-wingers, no Second Amendment without First Amendment. 1A guarantees 2A. And you might say, oh, no, 2A guarantees 1A. No, it doesn't. And Donald Trump is willing to sacrifice that plus every international agreement the United States has ever signed, from the Genocide Convention, support for the United Nations, human rights conventions, and so forth. Trash the ICC, trash the ICJ, trash all the UN resolutions that go all the way back to 1948, trash the U.S. reputation, backing a genocide, supporting a criminal entity masquerading as a state in the Middle East, and allowing a leader who's a wanted war criminal to come and festoon around in the Capitol like he is the president of the United States. I'm talking about Netanyahu. So Trump's done all of that damage just to protect one special interest group that's obviously important for U.S. global hegemony. Israel does the U.S.'s bidding in the region in West Asia, does Britain and European elites bidding as well. But you're willing to trash all that? European countries are doing the same.
Yes.
They're sacrificing the legitimacy. Why? For Israel and the military-industrial complex, effectively. And they're terrified to go against it. Our leadership, even though the public are against all this, the leadership are just so kowtowed into this position, and it's so at the mercy of this lobby. It's the American people's general views are not that of Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton.
They're not.
And if you look at election polling from Trump, Obama, Bush, right back, we'll go 5 or 6 elections, the anti-war vote was always the swing vote in bellwether counties, key bellwether counties. Donald Trump knew that. He campaigned as anti-war president, got elected twice. Did
the opposite. And did the
Obama
opposite.
Twice, and did the opposite when they get in. George Bush Jr., 2000, narrowly beat Al Gore. If he did, that's another debate. But on the issue of no new nation building, as a rejection of what Bill Clinton did in the Balkans and previous errant adventurism from the Clinton administration, George Bush got an edge to conservatives on that very issue. And of course, when he got in, the opposite happened. You see a pattern that develops, that people don't want it, but we get it anyway. No matter who you vote for, you get John McCain in America. As I think somebody said, Judge Napolitano, or somebody said that. Humorously, but it's so true.
No, it is true. I mean, to make your point, or the back of that point up, Israel spent like $100 million in our election. And you have to wonder, if you already have people support on a particular issue, why do you have to spend that much money?
They spent more than that. If you count individual Mary Madelson and the rest, total Israeli contributions or Israeli aligned contributions to the Republican Party, including the Trump campaign, is $600 million in the last election cycle.
That's astonishing.
600, over $500 million. Who else has that kind of money to throw around? I mean, Elon Musk's close. He threw in 250 million plus, $250 million, but the Israeli lobby outspends everybody. And you know what, Jamal? Trump could have got elected without that money, probably, arguably. And he didn't spend that kind of money in 2016, and he beat Hillary Clinton, that accumulated the largest amount of campaign war chest in the history of U.S. politics. And Trump
spent money in this election, to be honest. I mean, Kamala spent what, $1.3 billion in 6 months.
Trump could have won without that.
Yeah, he didn't need it.
He could have won just on rallies and his own inertia and gravitas, but he accepted the money from the mob, and the Israeli mob made him an offer he can't refuse, and so they own you. You take that kind of money, they own you, and that goes for Turning Point USA as well. And I sympathize and for Charlie Kirk, because he probably was in way over his head. What he ended up swimming in is not what he probably got involved in 2012. I can tell you that's for certain.
What do you think the difference is? I mean, according to Candace Owens, he had a bunch of Zionist goons try to convince him in the Hamptons that she uses the term threatened. Effectively, as you point out, he had told people that he felt like he had no wiggle room. He had to hold the line on the issue of being pro-genocide, even though he might have been wavering on that particular issue. I mean, do you think that's what it was? That he took the money thinking, I'm going to go in this direction, and he found himself elsewhere?
Well, he probably thought he was doing the right thing. You know, he admonished Islam, insulted Muslims, jeered and made jokes about Palestinians being killed in Gaza. He did all that over the years, but you know, he wasn't a particularly deep intellectual person. He's just kind of an average commentator, but with a lot of money behind him, and the full strength of the Republican electoral machine, and the Trump machine was behind him as well, because he was an ally. But that's not to say that Charlie Kirk at the age of 31, you know, our brains are still neuroplastic at 31. They're still developing. And Charlie Kirk most likely developed some of his own ideas. How? Well, look at who his good close friends are. Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and others, people that he liked and respected, whose views had changed on this issue. And I believe Charlie Kirk's views were changing too. Is that the reason why he was, you know, shot, or why this incident happened? I can't tell you that. We can only speculate. But we can look at the political circumstantial case, to me, is much more compelling than all these sort of, oh, the shooter lived with a trans person. A lot of this stuff is being walked back as we speak.
Oh, it's nonsense.
The engraving on the bullets, the living with trans. I thought he was living with his family.
He was living with his family.
And then suddenly he's living with trans. So the governor of Utah put out some crazy statements. That was the most cringeworthy press conference I've ever seen, trumped only by Kash Patel. I mean, it's embarrassing what these people are doing. They just can't help themselves. Where's the decorum? Where's the restraint? Where is the consternation on these issues? We're in such a performative political circus environment.
Yes,
it's beyond cringeworthy at this point. It's just turning into the idiocracy. You know, I'm half expecting someone to crack open a can of Mountain Dew at some point. But I mean, what else? How else can you comment on this sort of stuff? And then you have Netanyahu driving the wedge in before, you know, the body's still warm.
The Netanyahu thing was weird, because you have the leader of a country who's committing a genocide immediately after Charlie Kirk gets shot, starts putting out tweets back to back to back, condemning Muslims, saying that Muslims had something to do with the murder. And as you said, this was all taking place before the body was even cold. It was before there was a person in custody. Yeah, it was very strange. All of it was very strange.
And then stranger, Bill Ackman rushes to give a $1 million reward for information finding the killer. What was that all about?
Well, Ackman was apparently one of the people that was in the meeting that took place in the Hamptons. And Ackman responded to Candace Owens, effectively confirming that the meeting took place, even though he characterized it as a mutual conversation, not necessarily a quote-unquote threatening conversation. But you have to wonder, like, why did you guys need to have that meeting if Charlie Kirk was on board for all this stuff? Ackman was the one that responded. So it's very strange. It's very bizarre. I agree with you that they're using him as a political weapon and a cudgel, as opposed to him just being a person. All of these people are now coming out the woodwork. His death is similar to the way he lived, a political tool in both cases. So yeah, I agree with you.
That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. And you know, if you understand anything about what you're looking at here, understand that Charlie Kirk's political career is a reflection of the people that paid for that organization, that made him a national figure, you know, that made Turning Point $100 million a year concern. Okay. And he was then used as a tool by forces much greater than him. And after his death, he continues to be used as a political tool to generate political capital, which people are using to leverage agendas. If we understand anything out of all of this, understand that first. Then we can have some other conversations about it. But that should be the baseline.
Yeah. Do you think this is going to work to create, I guess, whatever the political divisions they're effectively trying to create? It's like, yeah, there's rancor. and they're lunatics who are raising him to the level of some kind of deity, as a martyr per se. And if somebody is a martyr, you have to a martyr for what? What is the objective for being a martyr? Do you think this is ultimately going to work, though? I've seen a lot of this on social media, but is social media enough of reality to bring this into the, let's say, the real world?
Well, the martyr for what? That's a correct question, Jamal. You have to ask intelligent questions. A martyr for what? And a martyr against Islam is how some people are fashioning it. That's what Netanyahu would like to you to come away with. A martyr against wokeism, a martyr against the trans, a martyr against LGBT, a martyr for conservative values. What are conservative values? Are conservative values carpet bombing the most densely populated patch of land on the planet and annihilating the native Palestinian population? Are those conservative values? Because Mark Levine believes they are, and so does Ben Shapiro. And they were even questioning, or at least they didn't mention his name, but there's one notorious clip that's going viral on X right now of Levine and Shapiro talking about a certain person who is supposedly conservative, but isn't really. And I think they were, personally, it sounded like they were taking a shot at Charlie Kirk. This was months ago, or maybe previously. And, so in their mind, conservative means you must back the genocide, you must support Israel, you must support the wars. That's, in their mind, conservative. When in fact, traditionally in America, that's the opposite of conservative. Paleo-conservative is not going to find in search of monsters overseas and is against military adventurism. It's more in line with, let's say, Ron Paul's foreign policy agenda. Yes. That's traditional American conservatism, paleo-conservatism, as it's called now. It's whatever people are ascribing to conservatism, like on Fox News now, flag waving, dropping bombs, killing brown people in the desert. That's not conservative. And it's certainly not Christian, especially because those are American bombs that have eviscerated Christian churches and killed scores of Christians in Gaza, where they were previously living in perfect harmony with their Muslim neighbors amongst other Palestinians. And again, what I just said there is something that a lot of so-called conservatives will not understand nor believe what I just said. But it's true. Yeah. So what does this speak? This really speaks to, I think, the sort of the decrepit intellectual state of the U.S. political discourse right now in 2025. And at the figurehead of that, of course, the top of that is Donald Trump, who, let's face it, not a particularly deep person.
No.
In terms of forming complicated thoughts, and is surrounded by equally shallow people, a lot of charlatans, a lot of grifters, a lot of social media posers trying to pad their, nest for the next gig. And a lot of people, I think, that, let's just say, probably don't even have the president's best interests at heart either. Okay. And so, I mean, that's what we've got in Washington right now. And it's pretty shocking. And look at the reactions to these situations and what's going on in the world. It really speaks volumes as to where these people's heads are at. The woke, anti-woke thing is, to me, this is just so ridiculous at this point, because granted, the radical progressives had spent decades building up, woke ideology to the point where it just reached farcical levels. And it really radicalized a lot of people on the so-called left. But the anti-woke effort by conservatives has radicalized people on the so-called right. So you have people, two sides radicalized, hitting each other now, colliding. And that can only result, I think, in a type of a sectarian environment. And it's sectarian environments, if we study them, and those of us who study political science or history, who understand Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, Catholic, Protestant, or understand Shiite, Sunni, and a lot of these fissures and sectarian divisions have been promoted by the European powers, the British and the Americans especially, most recently in the Middle East. And Israel is just completely driving these wedges and hammering them because it suits their existential legitimacy in the region by creating more factions all around them, including themselves being the main instigator in many cases. So, but my point, Jamal, is sectarianism, if you take society down this road, sectarianism is generational. It means that your children are born into it. Look at the Nazi Banderite camps in the Ukraine. Look at how they groom the children from 7, 8, 9 in those camps to be Ukrainian nationalists, to hate Russians, to, along religious nationalist lines, ethnic lines, to hate blacks, to hate Jews, or whatever. Becomes a generational issue. And this is the danger of what the road that we are treading down as a society in the West is sectarianism. And it can't be resolved in the next election. It becomes a generational problem. That is the point. People need to wake up to this reality. You need to study and know your history. You really do. And you need to study these situations around the world and ask yourself, is this being replicated in my country right now, in my political economy? Is my political economy being fueled by this type of sectarianism? In America, 100% yes. And in the UK with Tommy Robinson, in Europe as well, this is what's happening. People need to kind of wake up and realize what's happening in front of them. A lot of people can't see it, amazingly.
Patrick, you are awesome. I thank you for this. Honest to God, my audience loves you. I always appreciate you joining me. Patrick Henningsen, founder of independent news website 21st Century Wire. He also has his show that comes on, and please give us details on when that comes on, just so people are aware of it.
Yeah, we're Sunday Wire live every Sunday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. UK time. Midweek Wire, normally we do it on Wednesday or Thursday, same time, 5 p.m. UK, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard. And I also do the UK Column News on Friday live at 1 p.m. UK time. That's a very popular show in Europe. And also a number of other great podcasts, including yours, Jamal, throughout the week. And again, 21stcenturywire.com, daily news and analysis every day. And some of our reports are, I think, some of the best out there. So I encourage people to check us out daily.
I'm going to put the link at the bottom of the video when I cut the video, just so the audience can see it. I visit your site myself. You have great work. And so definitely check Patrick out. Patrick, thank you for this, man. You be safe, okay?
Cheers. Thanks, Jamal.
Bye-bye.